I'm going to invite up Michelle in a moment to read the scripture. But just in anticipation of that, throughout the fall we've been reading excerpts from the Hebrew Bible, what has sometimes been referred to as the Old Testament, but which might more appropriately be referred to as the First Testament, because old implies that it has been replaced by something new. And the truth is, the Hebrew Bible, or the First Testament, remains a rich story with wisdom, and it's part of our Christian heritage. That said, even those of us who may have grown up in the church may be less familiar with these texts than with the stories of Jesus. So let me give you a less than 2-minute synopsis of what's been going on in the generations leading up to the events that we read about today. Ready? On your mark, get set, go. God called Moses to confront Pharaoh and lead the enslaved Israelites out of Egypt. As they fled, the waters of the Red Sea parted so they could cross over on dry land. Having been liberated, the Israelites spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness, learning to live as God's people according to the law God had given, those 10 commandments we discussed earlier this month. Finally, the second generation of Israelites crossed over into the land of Canaan, which is called the Promised Land. The awkward truth is that the Promised Land was already occupied by others, so the Israelites took up arms to claim the land. Does this sound familiar? This part of the story deserves its own sermon. They settled and established judges to govern them, but eventually they decided that what they really wanted was a king. No, you don't, said God. Yes, we do, insisted the people. So finally God anointed Saul to be the first king of the Israelites. David comes into the picture as a teenage sheep herder, chosen by God while he was still a kid and anointed by the prophet Samuel to succeed Saul after God gets annoyed with Saul. He was invited to the royal court to play his harp for Saul and then volunteered to help out when they got into a skirmish with their enemies, the Philistines. After David killed the giant Philistine Goliath with a stone from his slingshot, King Saul put him in charge of the entire Israelite army. Later, when Saul died in battle, the throne was contested by one of Saul's sons and by David, who, by the way, had married Saul's daughter Michal. In the verses we read this morning, the people recognize that what has already been declared by God, that David should become the next king over a unified Israel. The elders anoint him. In the second passage, David moves the religious and political center of the kingdom of Israel to Jerusalem, located halfway between the northern and the southern reaches of the kingdom. They bring along an ark, a kind of ornate chest thought of to contain the very presence of God. They form a grand parade, dancing and singing as they process in Jerusalem. 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Friends, would you hear these verses from the book of 2 Samuel?
Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, "Look, we are your bone and flesh. For some time, while Saul was king over us, it was you who led out Israel and brought it in. The Lord said to you, 'It is you who shall be shepherd of my people Israel, you who shall be ruler over Israel.' So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and at Jerusalem he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. David and all the people with him set out and went from Baal-Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. They carried the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God, and Ahio went in front of the ark. David and all the house of Israel were dancing before the Lord with all their might, with psalms and lyres and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals.